Discover the incredible journey of a boy who fled England to build a life-changing empire. Oliver Hayes stood on the docks, the salty air tangled in his messy hair, his heart pounding like the waves splashing against the boat. He was just 15, with a tattered coat wrapped around his slight frame that felt like both armor and a shroud. Behind him lay a world of bitter economic despair in England, but in front of him, the promise of a new life shimmered. As the ship's whistle blew, his mother's tears haunted him. She'd hugged him tight, whispering that his dreams were worth the risk. There was a world to conquer, a future to build. The whispers of hope intertwined with fears as he stepped onto American soil, a battleground for his aspirations. Each bustling street felt alive and foreign, a cacophony of languages swirling like the colors of a painter's palette. People rushed past him like boats in a storm, their faces a mix of joy, struggle, and ambition. For Oliver, the world seemed so big, but inside, he clutched his hope like a lifeline. A belief flickered in him that one day, he would support his family back home one loaf of bread at a time. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The first weeks were a blur of kitchens and markets, scrubbing floors and washing dishes. The diners thrummed with life, but Oliver felt the weight of every disparaging glance aimed at his worn shoes and thick accent. Yet, he met Mr. Thompson, a grizzled veteran with a heart bigger than his tough exterior. With his calloused hands and weathered smile, Thompson became Oliver's unexpected mentor, teaching him the value of hard work and respect. Through every lesson and labored breath, Oliver felt his spirit kindling, that little spark igniting the flame of the American dream. As he settled into the routine, he found a band of locals, each one burdened yet brave. They swapped stories, a kaleidoscope of hope and loss, laughter and tears. They became a brotherhood, a vibrant tapestry of dreams stitched together amid fading glories. United by their struggles, they fueled each other's ambitions. Oliver shared his vision of opening a community bakery, a beacon of togetherness, where every loaf would carry a tale of resilience. However, the joyous rhythm of the town soon thudded like a sudden storm. A factory closure sent shockwaves through the streets, sending once cheerful friends into despair. As desperation mounted, old prejudices festered, widening the rifts that had begun to heal. Oliver felt the weight of it all, the laughter fading into silence. Then, everything tilted when he received word of a family emergency back in England. Torn between the dream he was forging and the love that pulled him home, Oliver felt the relentless storm within him. He stood at the edge of the fraying community, a sense of purpose surging through his veins. Could he rally their strength against adversity? Would he spark change in their hearts? There, looking out at the town square, Oliver realized he was on the cusp of transformation. The leaves danced around him, whispering secrets of the battles to come. Would he return home or ignite the embers of hope in this place he had come to love? The unanswered question lingered like a deep breath before the plunge, and he knew the journey ahead would shape not just his future, but that of everyone who stood beside him. Oliver hesitated, thoughts swirling like leaves caught in a whirlwind. The town square was now a haven of uncertainty, shadowed by the struggles that loomed overhead. He could feel the weight of every decision pressing against his chest. What did home mean now? Was it the family he longed for, or the community that had begun to embrace him as one of their own? As he turned away from the comforting warmth of the bakeries and bustling markets, he spotted Mr. Thompson leaning against the fence outside the diner. The older man's eyes held the understanding of a mentor who had seen his fair share of turmoil. Oliver approached, his heart racing with unshed words. "Mr. Thompson," he began, his voice wavering. "What if I leave now? What if I go back?" Thompson studied him closely, the lines of his sun-weathered face deepening. "Sometimes, lad, we have to make a choice between what we desire and what's needed. It's a hard lesson, but it's part of what builds us. I just got here. What if I can't come back? What if I lose everything? Everything worth having comes with a risk, Thompson replied, his voice steady. The journey will shape you, whether you go back now or stay and fight for your dreams here. Oliver felt a choking sensation, anger and fear intertwining. What's the point of fighting if I can't help my family? What if you could help not just your family, but people here too? Are you willing to fight for something greater? His words stirred something buried deep inside Oliver. A flame flickered to life not just for him, but for the bonds forged among the struggling townsfolk. The bakery was more than a dream. It was a promise. Determined, Oliver spent that night surrounded by shadows and flickering lamplight, pacing as he mulled over his choices. What could he do to rally the spirit of his friends? He thought of their stories, the struggles that brought them together, and he felt a surge of hope. He wouldn't let his dreams die quietly. In the days that followed, Oliver mobilized the neighborhood, extending an invitation to a meeting in the square. The gathering sparked with uneasy excitement, anxious glances exchanged among the hesitant crowd. Pulse quickening, Oliver took a deep breath, his heart pummeling against his ribcage. This was his moment. Friends, he called out, his voice rising above the murmurs. I know times are tough, but we can't let fear divide us. Together, we can build something that unites our hearts. We need a community bakery, a place that reflects our strength. In the crowd, faces transformed. Hope flickered back to life as they listened, captivated. They remembered what laughter felt like and how it coursed through warm bread loaves shared among neighbors. Slowly, hands began to rise, people stepping forward with ideas and dreams of their own. In that moment, Oliver felt the power of connection. With each voice that chimed in, the spark grew brighter. But just as hope surged, Oliver's heart dropped when he spotted a familiar figure on the edge of the crowd, his old schoolmate James. Deep resentment twisted in James' expression, and Oliver's stomach churned. Would this one familiar face hinder everything they had worked for? The crowd waited, anticipation brewing like storm clouds overhead. Oliver's pulse quickened. What would James do? His dream flickered like the candles around him. Would so much promise collapse before it truly began? He took a step forward, ready to embrace the challenge ahead, heart pounding in sync with the uncertainty of tomorrow. Would the strength of their dreams fracture under judgment? Or would it rise, like bread to the oven, resilient and warm? Oliver locked eyes with James, each second stretching like a tightrope. The crowd around him felt like a living thing, waiting to see which way he would turn. As he took a deep breath, he heard the gentle murmur of the townsfolk, their hopeful encouragement weaving around him like a soft blanket. He couldn't show them doubt. James, he called, his voice tinged with a mix of bravery and nerves. You know how tough things have been. I could really use your thoughts on what we can create together. The crowd shifted, eyes darting from Oliver to James. A flicker of tension hung in the air, heavier than the clouds above. James stepped forward, his brow furrowed as if wrestling with every syllable. Do you really think a bakery will change anything? He shot back, sarcasm draping his words. What are you suggesting instead? That we leave things as they are? Just wait for someone else to save us? Oliver felt the heat rise to his cheeks. James didn't back down, his resentment palpable. Yet, Oliver sensed that there was more beneath James' surface, of pain, a raw edge of struggle that mirrored his own. Look, I get it, James snapped, crossing his arms. You think people want to bake bread while families are losing jobs and homes? You think loaves of bread will fix that? A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. Oliver felt the weight of their uncertainty. This wasn't just a conversation between two boys. It felt like a community's heartbeat, fragile yet determined. I know it's not a simple answer, Oliver replied, his voice steadier than before. But what if we could give ourselves a little light? A bakery isn't just about bread. It's about community, about rebuilding trust, sharing our stories. Could be a lifeline, a place where we can come together. James paused, his expression faltering, if only for a moment. You really believe that? Oliver nodded, vulnerability flooding his heart. I do. We've all faced our own battles. What if we harness that? Together, we could find strength in our stories and create something beautiful. As James stood there, the flicker of uncertainty softened, and Oliver could see the tension begin to release. The crowd leaned in, hope flickering back into their eyes. Maybe James began, but the words danced on the tip of his tongue. Oliver could almost hear the wheels turning in his mind. The hesitation was thick, yet the specter of possibility lingered in the air. Let us brainstorm. Oliver waved his arms, urging the crowd to take action. What if we each brought our favorite recipes? What if we used local ingredients? This can become a source of pride, a place celebrated for its heart. Every loaf, every pastry, becomes a symbol of our resilience and unity. Tentatively, hands began to rise again, hesitant at first, but slowly gaining momentum. Excitement replaced fear, threads of camaraderie stitching the community together once more. James stood silent, wrestling with a mix of questions and thoughts, yet Oliver sensed a shift. Oliver stepped down from the platform, feeling empowered by the collective energy. As he made his way through the crowd, people began approaching him with ideas, piecing together the bakery project like a puzzle with bright, hopeful colors. But amidst the excitement, Oliver felt nagging doubt creep in. Was this enough? Could he really unite their dreams? And more pressing, would James find a way to support them or stand as an obstacle? Oliver's heart raced as he looked towards James, hesitant just a few steps away. Is this where we build something together? He wondered, his mind buzzing with hope and trepidation. Would they rise together, or would the shadows of their past keep them from the light? The next step would be pivotal, and Oliver held his breath, ready to face whatever came next. As Oliver stepped into the thrumming heart of the crowd, he felt their energy pulse like a wave. Each smile, each hesitant nod, was a shared spark lighting up the dim corners of their spirits. The atmosphere shimmered with possibility, but doubt still lingered at the edges of his mind. He turned back to James, who stood still, arms crossed, brow furrowed. What do you think? Oliver ventured, his voice softer now, hoping to draw James into this orbit of excitement. James sighed, the weight of the world in his shoulders. I just don't know if a bakery is enough, Ollie. There was a flicker of something in his eyes, vulnerability perhaps. What if people come together, but it doesn't really help? Then we'll figure it out together, Oliver replied, his heart racing. This is just the beginning. We can make this a hub for ideas, not just bread. Workshops, events, we can even invite local musicians to perform. His enthusiasm poured out of him, and he felt it reverberate back from the crowd. Can you imagine kids crafting art while their parents bake? Could be a place of joy. James shifted his weight, a hint of interest sparking in his expression. But how do we get started? It's not like we have funds just lying around. Let us start small, Oliver said, his confidence building. What if we host a community potluck to gather recipes and ideas? If people see how much we support one another, they might chip in more than just ideas. They could invest. The crowd murmured, the tension easing as they began to see the value in his words. One voice rose above the rest, a woman in a bright red sweater. I love that. I have a family recipe for apple pie. My grandma used to make it every fall. Excited chatter spread like wildfire. Hands shot up again, people eager to share their own culinary legacies. Oliver felt a smile stretch across his face. This was what he hoped for, a seed planted, now sprouting through the cracks of their struggles. Yet, reflecting on James' earlier concerns, a new thought wormed its way into his mind. What if someone tried to tear it down? He glanced at James, who remained watching, still trying to grasp the weight of everything. You're not alone in this, Oliver said, planting conviction into each word. Whatever happens, I want you on board. This isn't just my dream. It's ours. James met his gaze, and for a rare moment, their thoughts danced in shared silence. Then, a small smile crept onto his face, testing the waters of hope. Okay then, let us say we do this potluck. We'll need people to organize it. Can we count on the others? Oliver turned back to the crowd, the collective pulse now resonating with energy. He could feel it. "Who's in for a potluck?" he shouted. Cheers erupted, hands clapping, as they all rallied around the idea of coming together, not just to bake but to heal. But even amidst cheers, a whisper of apprehension lingered in Oliver's chest. The weight of their hopes was immense. Could it sustain when the hardships of reality bit harder than expected? As he stepped back, he felt the thrill of the moment cradle him, a warm cocoon of potential. Yet, just beyond, the sharp edges of doubt loomed larger. Would this band of hopefuls withstand the storm? The question lingered, a kaleidoscope of possibilities swirling in the air, waiting to unfold. What would they do when the bakery dream met the harsh light of day? The next steps held clues he couldn't yet predict, tantalizing him with the promise of change. Oliver stood at the center of the buzzing crowd, his heart thumping in sync with their excitement. The idea of a potluck brought a sense of unity that soothed the gnawing edge of doubt. Yet, in the depths of his mind, worries lingered like shadows, always threatening to creep in. "All right, folks," he called out, his voice eager yet firm. "Let us turn this buzz into action. We need volunteers to help coordinate." He watched as several faces lit up with purpose, hands raised eagerly. Hope bloomed in his chest. A man stepped forward, tall and broad-shouldered, with a friendly bearded smile. "I can help with logistics, set up tables, get the chairs sorted." His voice resonated with assurance. "Great. What's your name?" Oliver asked, stepping closer to him. "Tom. I used to run events for a community center, so I've got some experience." Oliver felt a wave of gratitude wash over him. That was just what they needed, a guiding hand to manage the chaos of a gathering. "Thanks, Tom. We also need someone to handle communications." "Who's good with social media?" A young woman with brightly dyed blue hair jumped in. "I can do that. I love sharing events online. I know how to get people excited about stuff." "Perfect." The pieces began to fit together, one by one, like a puzzle coming to life. Oliver felt James relax beside him, shifting his stance as he took in the budding enthusiasm. As the organization unfolded, community members stepped up. One by one, they shared ideas: decor, music, even the potential for a small donation box to help with baking supplies. Oliver couldn't help but notice the way their eyes sparkled with newfound determination. But just as the plans started taking shape, Oliver caught sight of a familiar face nearby. It was Brian, a local entrepreneur known for his sharp critiques and colder views on community efforts. Brian stood off to the side, arms crossed, eyes narrowed. Oliver felt his heartbeat falter, a cold shiver racing down his spine. "Looks like fun. But do you really think it'll work?" Brian called out, his voice cutting through the warmth of the moment. "What's a potluck going to change, really? This town needs more than just pie recipes." Oliver's heart sank. He glanced at James, who remained quiet, their previous momentum threatened. "We're starting with a small step," Oliver replied, searching for the right words. "Sometimes that's all it takes to begin a big change." "Change? Sounds nice, but you'll need funds, and who's really going to show up?" "You're dreaming if you think people want to help," Brian shot back, disdain evident in his tone. The crowd behind them murmured uncertainly, a ripple of doubt stirring. Oliver clenched his fists, feeling the weight of skepticism hanging in the air like a storm cloud. Would his dreams be swept away by naysayers? Just then, James stepped forward, a flicker of fire igniting in his eyes. "You might think people want to show up, Brian. But every time I've doubted the community, they've surprised me." His voice echoed with conviction. "This isn't just about a bakery. It's about bringing hope back to our town." Oliver felt a surge of gratitude towards James. Together, they stood stronger. The crowd seemed to respond. Heads nodded, shoulders straightened. He could feel their collective resilience emerging. "Who's with us?" James called, raising his hands in the air. Hearts began to lift, voices rising in defiance against the shadows Brian cast. "We are," came the reply, a chorus of brightened spirits. But beneath the rising tide of support was a trembling foundation. What if Brian's doubts became a reality? What if the potluck failed? As the crowd continued to rally around the plan, Oliver caught James' eye. They exchanged an unspoken promise to weather whatever storm lay ahead. But with Brian lurking in the shadows, uncertainty loomed. What if the very dream that united them began to unravel in the face of reality? The feeling tightened around Oliver as he breathed in deep, grappling with the storm within. They were creating something beautiful, but would it be enough to survive the brewing conflict? As excitement shifted again in the air, Oliver prepared for the next challenge, not knowing how the budding dream would face the trials ahead. How far would they have to go to prove that a small idea could create real change? The energy in the air crackled with anticipation. Oliver could sense a collective breath being held as everyone looked to him for direction. It was a daunting realization, but he was ready for it. The challenge of uniting his town hung heavily above them. All right, we've got our roles. We need everyone to start spreading the word. Let us make this potluck something to remember, he urged, trying to rally the crowd. James nodded, enthusiasm bouncing back as he raised the excitement level with a few catchy ideas for the event. How about we have a theme? Taste of our community. Each dish can tell a story. He watched as people whispered excitedly amongst themselves, nodding and laughing a little. Perhaps they would embrace his idea. This could be the spark they needed. As the chatter intensified, Oliver allowed himself a moment of hope. Every voice in the crowd felt like a piece of a larger puzzle snapping into place. Yet, doubt still lingered, a whisper woven through his thoughts. Was it too soon to dream? He couldn't afford to let his insecurities creep back in. With a deep breath, he recentered his focus on the crowd before him. Ben, a quiet old man known for his famous apple pie, piped up from the back. I'll bring my pie. It always gets people talking. Cheers erupted, and suddenly everyone began to throw in their own food ideas: barbecue ribs, macaroni and cheese, homemade breads. Each suggestion built the fabric of a shared tapestry, colorful and vibrant. But it wasn't only about the food. They needed decorations too. What about string lights? They always add a warm touch, suggested an older woman named Clara, her voice breaking the momentary silence as everyone considered her words. They were starting to visualize a charming, spirited gathering that could lift them from their mundane routines. Yet, in the back of his mind, Oliver could still see Brian's face. The skepticism in his eyes stung. What would Brian think when their plans neared completion? Would he still throw shade on their hard work? As people began to share little anecdotes about past gatherings, laughter filled the air, and the tension slowly morphed into lighthearted jokes and friendly banter. James nudged Oliver, as if sensing his struggle. We've got this, Oliver, he said softly, confidence shining in his eyes. Just remember to enjoy the ride. But Oliver wasn't sure how to shake off the doubt. Were they really going to make this work? Just a potluck, in a town that had seen better days? Wasn't it just doomed to be another flash in the pan? As the sun dipped low and cast a golden glow over their gathering, Oliver knew deep down they had something special, building something bigger than a potluck. This was about connection, healing, and bringing hope back into their lives. He felt motivated to prove to Brian and to himself that they could create real change. Suddenly, the sharp beep of his phone interrupted his thoughts. A message notification from Tom popped up. We should also think about how we're going to manage crowd control. It could get wild. Oliver frowned slightly, the reality of the logistics rearing its head, but the spark remained. Let us meet again soon, he said, raising his voice. We've still got a lot to pull together. The crowd started to disperse, a newfound energy pumping through their veins. But even as they laughed and connected, Oliver felt the weight of what lay ahead. He glanced at James, who wore an encouraging smile, ready for whatever came next. As the last of the crowd faded into the early evening shadows, Oliver stood still, wrestling with his lingering thoughts. Would they be able to rise above the doubts that lingered in the air like a thick fog? What if the potluck turned out to be more than just food? What if it served as a spark that ignited change in their community? Doubt still clawed at him, but as he collected his thoughts, He felt a flicker of light deep within. What wouldn't he give to see it all come to life? Oliver's heart raced as he watched the last few townsfolk meander off into the warm evening. A blend of excitement and dread swirled in his chest. He could feel the weight of the potluck pressing down like a heavy blanket, full of hopes and dreams. But what if it all crumbled? James was beside him, still buzzing with ideas. "So, when do we set up the decoration committee?" he asked, his eyes sparkling with determination. "Let us aim for this weekend," Oliver replied, trying to keep the nerves at bay. "Everyone can bring what they can, and we can string up the lights together." The image of their town transformed by glimmering decorations brought a small smile to his lips. "Perfect. And I can gather some supplies from my dad's hardware store," James replied enthusiastically. His unwavering spirit was contagious. Oliver felt bolstered by his friend's confidence. Just then, Tom slipped back into the forefront of his thoughts. The practical logistics were creeping up again. How would they manage all these people? "We should probably think of a layout and some activities to keep everyone engaged too," he remarked, half to himself, half to James. "I'll handle the activities," James shot back, fists raised like a gladiator preparing for battle. "Trust me, a potluck can absolutely have games." As they walked back through the quiet streets to Oliver's house, they began brainstorming ideas. A pie-eating contest, perhaps? That definitely could get everyone involved. Oliver started imagining kids laughing, families connecting. How wonderful would it be to see people really engage with one another? But then, just as quickly, memories of Brian's doubt shadowed these thoughts. Would they still talk about this gathering after the last plate was cleaned? Or would it just dissipate, like every other fleeting flash of hope this town had experienced? By the time they reached Oliver's front porch, the light inside glowed invitingly. He invited James in for a quick snack. As they settled at the kitchen table with a few cookies, the conversation shifted, brimming with laughter. But soon seriousness returned. "I know it's a lot, Oliver, but really you should just let the community surprise you," James said, leaning forward. "If you keep stressing about it, you might miss the magic. You gotta believe in them and in what you're doing." Oliver nodded, appreciative of how James could lift his spirits. "You're right. It's just I want this to mean something. I want Brian and everyone else to see that we can achieve something special." James shrugged, taking a bite from a cookie. "They will. You just have to show them. Have a little faith." Faith, that was the tricky part. Crumbs from the cookies scattered on the table seemed to represent how fragile this whole endeavor was. But as he watched James laugh and joke, Oliver found glimmers of hope creeping back in. An idea sparked suddenly. What if we documented the potluck? Like a community cookbook afterward? Everyone can share their recipes and stories. James's eyes widened, a grin spreading. "That's brilliant. It would bring folks together even after the event. Plus, it gives everyone a reason to get involved." They spent the next hour planning more details, their laughter mingling in the air like the sweet smell of cookies wafting through the house. Ideas flowed freely, carving pathways for connection and nurturing confidence. Each one felt like a small victory. But Oliver couldn't shake the feeling of tension still lingering at the edges. What would happen when the event neared? Would Brian's criticisms drown out their efforts? The doubts were like shadows, lurking just beyond reach as night fell. Oliver stood at the window looking out at the stars twinkling in the vast sky. What if this potluck could be more than food, James? What if it could heal old wounds? "I think it already is," James said softly, placing a hand on Oliver's shoulder. "You just have to let it happen." The reality of the task ahead still lay heavy on Oliver's heart. But once again, there was a flicker of light inside him. Light that intertwined with their hopes. Light that brought warmth instead of doubts. Still, as he crawled beneath the covers later that night, a question lingered in his mind. Would they really be able to spark change with just a potluck? Or was this merely a pit stop on a longer journey? Determined to find out, he closed his eyes, hoping for the strength to help them all rise above fear. The sun peeked over the horizon, casting a warm glow over the sleepy town. Oliver woke up with a renewed sense of purpose. Today was the day they would lay the groundwork for the potluck, and he could feel the buzz of expectation in the air. After a quick breakfast, he called James. "Are we still on for the decoration committee?" "Absolutely. I'm just gathering up some supplies," James replied, excitement in his voice. "Meet me at the park in an hour?" "See you there." Oliver hung up, a smile breaking across his face. He hurriedly got dressed, his mind racing with thoughts of how they could transform the park into a welcoming space. Arriving at the park, the morning air was cool, but filled with a promise that warmed Oliver from the inside. He spotted James by the pavilion, surrounded by a variety of colorful decorations. The sight was instantly uplifting. "Look at all this," James exclaimed, waving his hands as if conducting an orchestra. "We can hang these lanterns from the trees and set up tables along the pathway." Oliver's eyes widened. "This is amazing. It really will feel like a festival." As they began decorating, more volunteers trickled in, eager to help. Faces Oliver hadn't seen in ages appeared, exchanging smiles and light-hearted banter. It was infectious. "Hey Oliver," called Sarah, a longtime neighbor. "I brought some of my grandmother's old tablecloths. Thought they'd add a touch of charm." "Perfect. Thank you," he replied, feeling the warmth of gratitude flooding through him. With every new volunteer, each unique item brought into their workspace, Oliver felt the foundations of something beautiful forming. Hours flew by as string lights were hung and tables were arranged. He caught snippets of laughter carried on the breeze. The simple moments of shared effort felt like a balm, soothing old scars in the community. Just as Oliver felt the last threads of worry loosening their grip, he spotted Brian at the edge of the crowd. Arms crossed, his familiar scowl hadn't faded with time. Oliver's heart thudded in his chest. "Thought I'd come check out the festival," Brian said dryly, eyes scanning the decorations. "Looks like a kid's birthday party." Oliver's pulse quickened, the shadows creeping back. He wanted to retort but held his tongue, reminding himself why they were doing this. "Brian, we're trying to bring the community together," he replied, his voice steady. "It doesn't have to be perfect. It's about connection." Brian raised an eyebrow, his expression unreadable. "Connection? You really think a potluck will fix our town's problems?" For a moment, the air felt heavy. Oliver took a deep breath. "No, I don't think it'll fix everything. But it's a start. It's showing that we care enough to try." A flicker of surprise crossed Brian's face before he turned away, unwavering. Oliver felt a pang of frustration but quickly brushed it aside. He refocused on the process, on the faces around him filled with hope. The day wore on, sunlight giving way to a golden hue as they wrapped up the decorations. Oliver stepped back, taking in the scene, the flutter of the banners, the laughter of families coming together, a small yet tangible shift in the atmosphere. James sidled up to him. "See? I told you they'd surprise you." Oliver smiled. "You were right. This feels special." But deep down, he knew the battle wasn't over. Brian's shadows still lingered, and doubt still crept at the edges of his mind. Would all their hard work matter? Was it enough to draw in even the most resistant hearts? As they stood in the fading light of evening, buzzing with anticipation, Oliver felt the heat of determination rise once more within him. This potluck was just the beginning. Wasn't it? What if we could create something that lasts beyond just one day? He mused aloud. James nodded thoughtfully. "We can. Imagine a monthly gathering or a community center, a space for connection all year round." A spark ignited in Oliver's chest. "Yes, we could call it the heart of town." With the evening embracing them, Oliver glanced up at the stars beginning to twinkle. He felt the first vestiges of hope take root, but as the excitement coursed through him, a nagging question echoed in his mind. Would they truly sustain this momentum, or would old doubts come creeping back just when he least expected it? To find that answer, they would need to prepare for far more than a single potluck. The following morning, Oliver awoke with a lingering sense of excitement that buzzed within him like the sound of birds outside his window. Today was the day of the potluck, and he could feel the weight of anticipation hanging in the air. He lay in bed, visualizing the park transformed by laughter, taste, and togetherness. the way he hoped it would serve as a launchpad for something bigger. After a quick breakfast, he jumped into action. His phone buzzed to life with messages from volunteers confirming their attendance and sharing their contributions. Each ping felt like a heartbeat, pulsating with hope. As he walked toward the park, the sun was breaking through the clouds, illuminating the familiar path. He recalled the first planning meeting when they discussed ideas how it had felt impossible, like trying to fill a well with only a bucket. Now, with everyone pulling together, he felt different. The potluck wasn't just a meal. It was a symbol, a promise. Arriving at the park, the buzz intensified. The tables were set, each one adorned with someone's creative flair. Families were arriving, carrying dishes that filled the air with tantalizing smells. Oliver felt a swell of pride. They had all worked so hard for this day. Oliver. Sarah waved enthusiastically, her arms filled with a tray of her famous baked beans. I hope you're ready for an onslaught of flavor. Absolutely. Let us make sure everything's in order. Oliver rushed around, directing volunteers, offering encouraging smiles. Each smile returned to him wrapped in gratitude. Halfway through the preparations, he turned to see Brian standing off to the side, arms crossed, jaw clenched. Oliver felt his stomach drop. Would today be a repeat of their last conversation? Is everything all right, Brian? He asked, forcing calmness into his voice. As he approached him, Brian's expression softened a fraction, but the bitter edge remained. I just don't see how this gathering will help, he muttered, glancing around at the busy crowd. People forget too easily. Maybe they do, but it's about the moments we create today. Oliver gestured to the families, laughing and chatting. It's connection, even if it's just for a few hours. We need to start somewhere, right? With a slight shake of his head, Brian remained silent. Oliver felt frustration creep back in. Yet, he knew anger would do nothing. Instead, he chose to focus his energy outward, mingling with the crowd, touting unity over negativity. As the afternoon sun lowered, the park transformed into a tapestry of colors and joy. Laughter echoed across the grassy expanse. They gathered around, the long tables filled with dishes from every home, a feast made by hands that had come together. All right, everyone, James called, standing on a small platform. Let us make a toast to our community and the beginning of something new. Oliver raised his glass alongside everyone else as his heart swelled. This was not just food. It was hope, a shared future stitched together by their commitment. And just as they began to eat, Oliver noticed a shift in Brian. He stood a little straighter, a slight smirk betraying his usual grim demeanor. Was he softening? Could this potluck truly be changing hearts? Just then, the laughter of children broke the air, a joyful chaos. Oliver's mind flashed back to why they started this. But as he glanced to the side, he saw Brian still watching, a flicker of something unidentifiable in his eyes, something that could be hope or further skepticism. Would the joyous moment they created together be strong enough to chip away at all the barriers? Would it be enough for someone like Brian to truly connect? Oliver felt a mix of anticipation and anxiety swirl inside him. The potluck was the first step, but what came next was the real question. With uncertainty creeping in, he looked out over the crowd, filled with resolve. They had ignited the spark, but would it catch fire or fizzle out? His heartbeat quickened. What other challenges ahead awaited them in the quest to build the heart of town? Would they be ready to face them together? The day of the potluck settled like a warm blanket over the community. Oliver walked through the park, absorbing the buzz surrounding him. Laughter, chatter, and the irresistible aroma of homemade dishes filled the air, weaving a tapestry of connection that tugged at his heart. Oliver, called out Sarah, her arms brimming with dishes from her family's kitchen. I hope you're ready for a flavor explosion. Absolutely. Just look at this, he responded, a smile breaking across his face as he took in the colorful spread of food. Their collective effort shimmered with promise of community, once tumultuous, now embracing each other. As families began to gather, toddlers ran about holding balloons, their joy infectious. Oliver moved through the crowd, chatting with faces both familiar and new. Everything felt alive, vibrant, hopeful, and full of love. But amidst the celebration, Oliver couldn't shake the weight of Brian's skepticism, still echoing in his mind. Would this really change anything? Hey, Oliver. A voice broke through his thoughts. It was James, carrying a pitcher of lemonade. You're starting to look too serious. Remember, we're celebrating. I know. Just thinking about how this could impact everyone, Oliver admitted. Sometimes you just have to let it unfold, James said, nudging him with a playful elbow. Now, let us get everyone involved. As they started setting up games and activities to bring people together, Oliver felt the energy shift. Every laugh shared, every story recounted, seemed to weave a new thread into the fabric of their community. It was beautiful, this connection and invisible bond forming over shared experiences. Then, amidst the laughter, Oliver spotted Brian again. His stony expression softened as he engaged with one of the children playing with a stray dog. For the first time, Oliver noticed a hint of admiration in Brian's eyes as he watched the families come together. Maybe they just need a push, Oliver thought. Maybe we all do. As the sun dipped low in the sky, Oliver called for everyone to gather for a toast. Heart pounding, he stood on a makeshift platform, a paper cup of lemonade in hand. Friends, he shouted, drawing the crowd's attention. Today isn't just about food. It's a chapter in a story we are writing together. Our community is a patchwork of dreams and determination. Let's raise our cups to new beginnings. Cheers erupted, voices intertwining in enthusiastic approval. Oliver's heart raced with joy. These were the moments he had dreamed of. When they began to eat, laughter erupted as families shared their dishes, swapping recipes and stories. It felt like a reunion, a family gathering where each person mattered. But then, things took an inspiring turn. Brian stepped forward, his arms still crossed but his posture less guarded. Listen up, he called. I might have been wrong about this. This isn't just about bread and pies. This is about us finding our way back to each other. Again, a ripple of surprise swept across the crowd. Oliver's heart swelled. Was this really happening? Could it be that Brian was beginning to understand? Oliver caught James' eye, and they shared a look of disbelief and joy. If we want to keep this going, we need to expand beyond just one potluck. Brian continued, his voice steadier now. Let us have more community events. Let us make committees. Let us truly engage, not just for ourselves, but for everyone who walked away from each other. Cheers erupted, hands clasped over cups. Laughter brightened the atmosphere, and hearts began to pulse in unison. Oliver stood awed. The ice was breaking as the potluck continued. Families dove into collaborative recipes for the next gatherings. Ideas flitted about like the fireflies painting the night with light, each voice reigniting hope in minds that had long grown quiet. In that moment, Oliver realized they hadn't just built a community bakery. They had built something far more impactful, a movement driven by joy, resilience, and togetherness. Hours later, as the last rays of sunlight faded, Oliver looked around at his friends and neighbors, glowing faces reflecting a warmth that had once felt so far away. It dawned on him that they had transformed not just the park but their connections to one another. This is just the beginning, James said, beside him, his smile wide. We are a family. Absolutely. Oliver's heart brimmed with hope. And there, under the starlit sky, dreams began to spark. The air thick with possibilities and connections, illuminating a future where hope would always thrive. As they cleaned up, he could see them all rising together. No longer just a boy from England with a dream. He was now part of a community, eldest son of promises made. Underneath the stars, he knew the journey ahead wouldn't always be easy. Shadows of challenges would follow. But with hope beating strong, Oliver felt ready to take it on. Could it really last? He wondered, smiling at the warmth radiating from neighbors who had become friends, replacing doubt with faith. Together, he whispered, squeezing his fist, memories of laughter, exchanges, and connections flooding back. Through every loaf of bread baked, every story shared, and every candle lit, they set their community ablaze with a light that could never go out. And that, above all else, would turn a simple potluck into a legacy of love and strength born from a boy who dared to dream. Help us keep this story going. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and feelings about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait not even one more second to share. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.